Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. A few weeks ago, I did a video on ultra pressured fishing and the baits that I like to use. And I forgot to talk about the bait that I used in the thumbnail picture. And I got called out for it. A lot of you guys saw it. You called me out, and I deserve to be because I totally screwed up. I took the photo for the thumbnail. I had the idea of the video, did the thumbnail photo first, and then did the video and forgot to talk about the stupid bait. So since then, I have mentioned it again, and I figured I would do an entire video on that bait because it has a huge impact on me as me and my fishing career. It's a bait that's probably really influenced me more than anything else I've done in terms of fishing, and it's one of the baits that I feel like really put me in motion towards a tournament career. So I want to talk about it. I do want to remind you guys that if you want to support the channel, head over into the description for the video. You can buy some Matt Steffen Fishing merchandise. Wear that proudly, a great way to promote the channel. Also, if you're looking to purchase tackle, please use the Tackle Warehouse link that I've provided in the video. That's a great way to support the channel. If you really want to support the channel, you'll bookmark that exact link so your future purchases, the Tackle Warehouse, will also be attributed back to the show. But it's really a good way to tell me that you guys appreciate the information that I'm putting forward. All right, so a little background information, because really that's what you need to know here. I'm going to say back when I was about 14 years old, my parents and I and my brothers, we had a house in northern Indiana. We were living in Chicago. My parents bought a small weekend house on a lake called Lawrence Lake, just outside of Plymouth, Indiana. And that's where I kind of grew up bass fishing and learning how to fish. It was a very good bass fishing lake, and it was just kind of where everything got in motion. You know, at that point, we had a 14-foot rowboat, we had a paddle boat, and at some point, after enough nagging by myself and my brothers, we convinced my parents to go buy what we considered like an actual boat at the time. It was a 16-foot Sea Nymph. It was the FM 160, Fishing Machine 160, so it was a steering wheel drive, but had a 40-horse Johnson on the back. To us, you know, raised front and back platform, to us it was like the bass boat that you've always dreamed about. It really was something that just made us want to take the boat all over, go to different lakes, and experience a lot of different types of fishing. So one of the lakes we would go to is a lake called Lake Maxinkuckee, not far from Plymouth. And my dad used to like to go there because they had walleye and we could occasionally catch some walleye. And it just turned into one of those lakes we would take the boat to on a regular basis. And when I mean regular, I mean like a couple times a year. And we came across one day a tournament that they were having out there, got wind of it through a local flyer or something along those lines, and we decided to enter it. It was the first tournament I had ever fished. So we got into it, and we ended up getting our butts completely kicked. I think we weighed 2 bass, you know, like for 3 pounds. They were barely keeper bass. And everyone else had limits. Like, the lake's not known for producing giant bags of fish normally, but there's a ton of fish in the lake, and everyone else had limits. And, you know, we came back, like, we got a lot to learn. Well, after that tournament, we went to the local bait shop, and one of the other anglers was there. It was one of the tournament organizers. And his name was Hal Wilkins. And I just remember we talked with him for probably a half hour, and he's like, you guys were doing the right thing. You weren't throwing the right bait. Everyone right now is throwing a hula grub. And that was the first time I had ever heard of it. First time I had ever seen it. I was like, this is pretty cool. So he showed us the hooks that he uses, the colors that he likes, when and where to throw it, and it became like our absolute go-to bait. At that time, you couldn't buy, most stores did not have them. Like, that was one of the things about the tackle shop we were in. They actually had some on the wall, and they were one of the few dealers like in the entire state of Indiana that had them. And we ended up contacting the Yamamoto company and getting like their catalog and putting orders in through that. And I remember it was always an exciting thing because every year we'd put an order in for a bunch of different color hula grubs. And it became very much the only bait. Well, not the only bait, but it became one of the only baits that we threw for like a several year period. And when I say the only bait, it was the only bait we would throw if we were fishing deep weed lines, because that's ultimately what we were told to use that bait for on Lake Maxinkuckee, because it was a summer tournament and guys were out fishing weed lines, and that's what they were throwing was the hula grub. So that was kind of what transformed me. I went from being like a straight shallow water guy where I would just, again, I was 14, 15 years old, but all we ever did was grab our spinner baits, grab our power worms, beat the bank, fish docks, fish lily pads, that type of thing. Never really had dawned across our mind that we should go fish the outside weed line. And Lawrence Lake is a great lake for that because it's 60 feet deep. It's only 60 acres, but it has a great, at the time, I don't know about now, but at the time it had a great milfoil line where the lake, you had matted milfoil everywhere, but you could go around the lake and visually see the drop off because it would go from 8 feet of water down into 20 plus feet of water. So you had a very defined visual weed line. And we would take our hula grubs and just take them down there and just cast to the milfoil edge and just drag it down. And we caught a ton of fish, and it became very much like the go-to thing for us, especially in the summer months when some of the other fishing got a little tougher. You could go and throw the hula grub and catch, you'd find groups of fish. You'd catch 4 or 5 fish on 4 or 5 casts. And it was really just a very, very eye-opening thing. And I know for like a lot of people probably watching this video, it doesn't sound like anything crazy. Like you can come to my channel and get all of this information in a handful of videos. Back then, there was, like really basically no internet. There was no YouTube. You had Bassmaster magazine, which I was a member of, but you'd read it and you wouldn't really know what you were doing. And you never, you never really heard about certain baits. It just was, compared to what it is now, there's very, very little information back then to now. So we kind of took this and learned it on my own. But for me, it was an eye-opening experience because it opened up the whole deep fishing world to me. It was just something completely different. At that point, there was no side imaging. There was nothing. We had our old Lowrance graphs that basically told you depth, and that was it. But I was able to take the hula grub and cover that deep weed line, but relate it over to fishing rock and riprap and deep humps and sand. And it just was one of those baits that all of a sudden really, really changed my approach to fishing. So for me, it's a sentimental bait, but I gotta tell you, it's one of the best fish catching lures out there. And it was for years very, very, very talked about and used. And I feel like it's definitely been pushed to the wayside lately. And it doesn't deserve that because it will catch fish everywhere. So I want to tell you about some of the times I use it. First, if I'm fishing anywhere where I've got like rock, gravel, sand transitions that's got relatively bare bottom, it's a great bait to drag. Anywhere you might think about dragging a football jig, this is a finesse football jig, and you'll get a lot of additional bites on it. Like for me, when I'm fishing a ledge lake, and I've gotten, I've fished through an area fishing traditional ledge lures, this is a bait I can put on and almost always catch an additional couple fish bringing through there because it's such a lifelike, natural looking bait. So I love using it for that. I still love to use it for really good, crisp weed lines. That's a great way to fish them. If you've got any sort of riprap bank, absolutely great way to fish it. Or you got like a channel swing bank where you've got some bigger chunk rock, ledge rock. You can work this down just like a jig. I mean, I know how there's guys that fish it literally every way. I've known some guys, the Hibdons, love to fish them on standing timber. They'll pitch it up against the pole timber and let it swim right down the side. It's almost a bait that you can throw and make work in almost any circumstance, whatever you're fishing, which is one of the things I love about it. It's such a natural bait that you get a ton of additional bites on it when the fishing's tough, which is one reason why I like it for ultra pressured fishing. So a couple of things I will point out is that the jig head that you use on it is a big difference. Like the two sizes that I like to use, this is the 5-inch size, and then you've got like the 4-inch size. And the only real difference is the thickness of the legs. The body length is about the same. Thickness of the legs is different. The 5-inch is a little thicker. 4-inch is a narrower plastic. I personally prefer to throw the 5-inch, but I have seen times where I feel like the 4-inch is a better bait. But getting back to the head style, if I'm fishing around rock, that's when I like to go with my football heads. These are owner ones that I have powder coated. I think they still make them. This is one of my favorites. I bought a ton of these hooks and ported myself, but it's just the owner ultra head football jig head. I like the Junction City ones. These have a nice little light wire weed guard in it. So if you are fishing around a little bit of wood or snags that you want to make it a little bit more snag resistant, it's got a light wire weed guard on it. But the football head is kind of my standard with the hula grub. I will say though that what I have found, if I'm fishing weeds or fishing the bait more on a swimming style, that's when I do like to go with a guppy head. That is a great bait for fishing anywhere you've got a little bit of grass, or you've got a nice good crisp weed line, or if you're just swimming the bait, because the bait works great as a swimming bait. That's one thing a lot of people don't use it for, but if you're swimming it for suspended fish, you'll catch a lot of fish too. But the thing that I like about the guppy head is it's got a little bit more of a pointed head, so you can swim it through the grass stalks better than you can, say, a football head, which is just wider and picks up more stuff. But the guppy head does work great on this. So those are kind of the two style heads that I like to use. From a color standpoint, man, it's hard to pick good colors, and they're offered in so many different colors that, in my opinion, as long as you're going with natural colors that are either bait fish imitations or your browns or your greens or your cinnamons, those are all going to be good. Some of my favorites, this is a brown with green flake, or cinnamon with green flake. It's color 140. Because you'll know a lot of the hardcore Yamamoto guys that have used these forever, they know the colors by number that is in the old catalog. So this is color 140. This is the color that I like to throw on the ledges on the Tennessee River Lakes, is the 231. It's plum with the small emerald flake. It's hard to beat plum on the ledge lakes. Just lots of different ones. This is another one of my favorites. This is color 328, watermelon with blue flake. So it's a bait, guys, that I've used for, almost 30 years at this point. So it's been around for a long time, but it definitely is fading. A lot of the packs that I still have are the old school Yamamoto packaging. I've heard stories about the stuff they used to put into the baits back then, and I hope it's not true, because some of the fish attracting stuff is kind of nasty from what I've heard, but it seems to definitely work. The new ones still work just as good, but the old ones, I don't know. I see that package, and that package just brings back memories for me. Anyways, guys, don't sleep on the hula grub. It's an absolute killer bait. It was dynamite. 20 years ago, it was like a bait everybody had tied on. Now it's disappeared. You don't hear people talking about it as much. It's still very much available, and it still very much catches fish. So if you can find one, I recommend giving them a try. Head out to your local lake. There's pretty much no wrong way to fish that bait. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful. I apologize about putting the bait in the thumbnail and not talking about it, but it really is one of my all-time favorite baits. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Another video coming out tomorrow.